Have you ever wondered why life suddenly became quiet? Why certain people disappeared? Why distractions stopped working? Why even surrounded by people, you still feel something missing inside you? Maybe this feeling is not loneliness. Maybe this is the first time your soul is no longer allowing you to escape yourself. Because sometimes life removes noise, removes attachment, removes emotional dependence, so you can finally meet the version of yourself buried beneath years of people-pleasing, overthinking, and silent emotional pain. Buddhism teaches that awakening often begins in isolation, not because you are being punished, but because your soul became tired of searching for love everywhere except within itself. And in this video, you may finally understand why the person you were desperately searching for your entire life was always you. You lost yourself trying to be found by other people. Most people do not lose themselves suddenly. It happens slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. At first, you do not even notice it happening. You begin changing little parts of yourself just to feel accepted. You laugh at things that do not feel funny. You agree with things that hurt your heart. You stay silent about your real feelings because you fear being rejected. You become softer around some people, smaller around others. You slowly learn how to hide the parts of yourself that might make people uncomfortable. And after years of doing this, you begin forgetting who you truly are. This is how self-abandonment begins. Not through one painful moment, but through thousands of small moments where you choose other people's comfort over your own truth. Many people spend their entire lives trying to be chosen in relationships, chosen in friendships, chosen by society, chosen by people who barely understand their heart. And because of this, their happiness becomes connected to how others treat them. If someone gives attention, they feel important. If someone replies quickly, they feel loved. If someone becomes distant, they feel anxious. If someone leaves, they begin questioning their value completely. This creates a painful emotional prison because your peace becomes controlled by people who cannot even control themselves. One person's mood changes, and suddenly your entire emotional state changes too. One cold message can ruin your whole day. One rejection can make you feel unworthy for weeks. This is what happens when your identity becomes dependent on outside validation. Buddhism teaches that suffering begins the moment we attach our worth to temporary things, and people are temporary. Attention is temporary. Praise is temporary. Approval is temporary. Even relationships change with time, but many people build their entire emotional world on these unstable things. And because of this, they live in constant fear. Fear of being ignored, fear of not being enough, fear of abandonment, fear of losing people. So they keep performing. They become the version of themselves they think others will accept. They become overly available, overly understanding, overly forgiving, even when their own heart feels exhausted. Many people say yes when they want to say no. They stay in painful relationships because they fear loneliness. They tolerate disrespect because they fear starting over. They pretend to be emotionally strong while secretly feeling broken inside. And over time, they become disconnected from their real emotions. They no longer know what they truly feel, because they spent so many years focusing on everyone else's feelings instead of their own. This is why some people suddenly feel empty in the middle of normal life. Nothing dramatic happened, but deep inside, their soul feels tired. Tired of pretending, tired of chasing approval, tired of trying to earn love by sacrificing themselves. The saddest part is this: many people become experts at understanding others while remaining complete strangers to themselves. They know what everyone around them needs, but they do not know what their own heart needs anymore. They know how to comfort others, support others, stay emotionally available for others, but when they are finally alone with themselves, they feel uncomfortable because silence exposes what distractions were hiding. And in that quiet moment, they realize something painful. They spent so much time trying to be loved by others that they forgot to build a relationship with themselves. They abandoned their own inner peace just to avoid rejection. They ignored their intuition just to keep people close. They disconnected from their own soul while trying to stay emotionally connected to everyone else. But Buddhism teaches something deeply healing. It teaches that peace begins the moment you stop searching for yourself inside other people. Because no human being can tell you who you are. No relationship can permanently complete you. No amount of attention can heal the emptiness created by self-abandonment. Real peace begins when you return to yourself. When you stop performing. When you stop begging to be chosen. When you stop measuring your worth through other people's behavior. And maybe this season of loneliness in your life is not punishment. Maybe it is the moment your soul finally became tired of disappearing for everyone else. Maybe life became quiet because you were meant to hear your own heart again. Maybe losing connection with certain people is how you finally begin reconnecting with yourself. The pain of loneliness begins when you become a stranger to yourself. Most people think loneliness means having nobody around. But that is not always true. Some people are surrounded by friends, family, conversations, noise, and still feel deeply alone inside. Why? Because real loneliness is not always the absence of people. Sometimes, real loneliness begins when you lose connection with yourself, when you stop understanding your own emotions, when you stop listening to your own heart, when you become emotionally disconnected from your inner world. This is why many people are afraid of silence. The moment everything becomes quiet, they suddenly feel something heavy inside themselves. Thoughts they were avoiding begin returning. Old pain rises to the surface. Emotions they buried years ago slowly start speaking again. And because this feels uncomfortable, most people immediately run back to distractions. More scrolling, more conversations, more entertainment, more emotional chasing. Anything to avoid sitting alone with themselves. But Buddhism teaches something powerful. The things you keep running from internally will continue following you until you finally face them with awareness. Pain does not disappear because you distract yourself. Loneliness does not disappear because you stay busy. The heart remembers what the mind tries to escape. This is why some people feel emotionally exhausted all the time, because their soul never truly rests. Their body may be sitting still, but their mind is constantly searching for something outside itself. Attention, validation, emotional reassurance, someone to fill the emptiness they feel inside. But external things can only distract inner emptiness temporarily. They cannot heal it permanently. And slowly, a person begins losing their relationship with themselves completely. They no longer know what truly makes them happy. They no longer understand their own emotions clearly. They become so focused on managing other people's feelings that they stop noticing their own emotional suffering. This creates a very quiet sadness, a sadness many people carry silently for years. They continue smiling, working, talking normally, but deep inside, they feel emotionally lost. And the painful part is this: many people do not even realize they are disconnected from themselves. They only notice the symptoms: constant overthinking, emotional dependency, fear of being alone, anxiety when nobody texts back, feeling empty after social interaction ends. These are often signs of inner disconnection, because when a person feels connected to themselves, solitude feels peaceful instead of frightening. But when someone becomes a stranger to their own heart, silence starts feeling unbearable. This is why many people stay inside unhealthy relationships longer than they should, not because they are happy, but because being alone forces them to face themselves, and they do not know how to do that yet. So they continue choosing emotional noise over inner peace. They continue chasing people who drain them. They continue filling every empty moment with distractions, because deep down, they are afraid of what they might feel in stillness. But Buddhism teaches that stillness is not your enemy. Stillness is where truth begins speaking. The modern world teaches people to constantly escape themselves, always stay busy, always stay entertained, always stay distracted. But a distracted mind can never truly heal. Healing begins when you finally stop running, when you sit quietly with your pain instead of escaping it, when you listen to your emotions without judging them, when you allow yourself to feel the loneliness you spent years avoiding, because hidden beneath that loneliness is often a version of yourself waiting to be seen again. a tired version, a neglected version, a deeply human version. And maybe that is why life sometimes removes distractions from your life. Maybe the silence is not punishment. Maybe your soul became exhausted from all the noise. Maybe life is trying to reconnect you with yourself before you completely lose who you are. The truth is, you cannot build real peace while disconnected from your own heart. You cannot feel emotionally safe if your happiness only depends on external things. At some point, every human being must learn how to sit with themselves peacefully, without needing constant validation, without needing endless distraction, without needing someone beside them every second to feel complete. And this journey is uncomfortable at first, because meeting yourself honestly can feel emotional. You begin seeing how much pain you ignored, how much sadness you carried silently, how much of your life was spent trying to avoid loneliness instead of understanding it. But slowly, something beautiful begins happening. The silence that once felt heavy starts feeling calm. The loneliness that once felt painful starts feeling healing. You stop fearing your own company. You stop needing noise all the time. You begin understanding your emotions instead of escaping them. And for the first time in a very long time, you start feeling connected to yourself again. That is the moment loneliness begins transforming into peace. Because Buddhism teaches that awakening does not begin when you find the perfect person. Awakening begins when you finally stop abandoning yourself. The love you were chasing was the love your own soul needed most. Many people spend their entire lives searching for one thing: love. Not just romantic love, but emotional safety. Someone who understands them deeply, someone who stays, someone who makes them feel important, someone who finally fills the emptiness inside their heart. And because of this, people begin believing that happiness exists somewhere outside themselves, in another person's attention, another person's affection, another person's presence. So they keep searching. They search through relationships, through emotional attachment, through endless connection, hoping someone will finally heal the loneliness they carry inside. But Buddhism teaches something very deep. The suffering inside your heart cannot fully heal if you continue abandoning yourself emotionally, because no human being can permanently give you the peace you refuse to give yourself. This is why some people receive love, yet still feel insecure, still anxious, still emotionally empty, still afraid of being abandoned, because the wound was never only about other people. The wound was also created by the relationship they had with themselves. Many people speak to themselves with a level of cruelty they would never use on another human being. They constantly feel not good enough, not attractive enough, not worthy enough, not lovable enough. And slowly, their inner world becomes filled with quiet self-rejection. This creates deep emotional hunger, a hunger that makes people chase love desperately, not because they are weak, but because part of them is starving emotionally, starving for comfort, starving for reassurance, starving to finally feel worthy. And when someone finally gives them attention, they become emotionally attached very quickly, because for a moment, they feel seen. But the painful truth is this: no amount of external love can permanently heal a heart that secretly believes it is unworthy. That is why some people become emotionally dependent on relationships. The relationship becomes their only source of happiness, their only source of validation, and because of this, they begin losing themselves inside the connection. They ignore red flags, ignore emotional pain, ignore their intuition, just to avoid losing the person who temporarily makes them feel complete. But Buddhism teaches that attachment creates suffering, because attachment says, I need you in order to feel whole. Real peace says, I can love you deeply without abandoning myself. This changes everything, because true healing begins when you stop begging other people to give you the love you refuse to give yourself. Most people are waiting for someone else to finally choose them, while constantly rejecting themselves internally. They forgive everyone except themselves. They understand everyone except themselves. They stay emotionally available for everyone, while emotionally neglecting their own heart. And over time, the soul becomes exhausted. This is why loneliness often feels heavier after relationships end. Because the relationship was not only connection, it was distraction from inner emptiness. And when the person leaves, all the pain you were avoiding suddenly becomes visible again. The silence becomes louder, the loneliness becomes deeper, the emotional dependency becomes obvious. At first this feels heartbreaking, but spiritually, this moment can become the beginning of awakening, because for the first time, you are finally forced to face the relationship you have with yourself. And many people realize something painful. They spent years searching for someone to save them emotionally, while never learning how to comfort their own heart. They waited for someone else to tell them they mattered, while treating themselves like they were never enough. But Buddhism teaches compassion, not only toward others, but toward yourself, toward your wounds, your sadness, your fears, your imperfect humanity. Healing begins when you stop seeing yourself as a problem that needs fixing and start seeing yourself as a human being who deserves kindness too. This changes the way you speak to yourself. You stop insulting yourself every time you make mistakes. You stop believing rejection defines your value. You stop measuring your worth through who stays and who leaves. And slowly, your inner world becomes softer, calmer, safer. You begin sitting with yourself differently, not with judgment, but with understanding. You begin listening to your emotions instead of suppressing them. You begin giving yourself the care you spent years begging from others. And something beautiful starts happening. You no longer chase love from a place of desperation. You stop trying to force people to stay. You stop feeling emotionally destroyed every time someone becomes distant, because your emotional foundation is no longer built entirely on external validation. It is built on self-connection. This is what many people misunderstand about Buddhist wisdom. The goal is not to stop loving people. The goal is to stop abandoning yourself while loving them. There is a big difference. Real love should not make you disappear. Real love should not force you to betray your peace. Real love should not make you feel emotionally starved while constantly asking for patience. The more connected you become with yourself, the less desperate you become for external reassurance. And this changes your entire life, because now you do not love from emptiness. You love from fullness. You do not seek people to rescue you from loneliness. You choose connections that bring peace instead of emotional chaos. And maybe this is the hidden truth loneliness was trying to teach you all along. Maybe the love you spent your whole life searching for was never supposed to begin with another person first. Maybe it was always supposed to begin with the relationship you have with yourself, because the person your soul needed most was never outside you. It was you. Solitude destroys the false version of you built for survival. Most people are not living as their true self. They are living as the version of themselves they created to survive emotionally. A version shaped by fear. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of being misunderstood, fear of not being enough. And slowly, without even realizing it, they begin building an identity around protection instead of truth. Some people become overly quiet because they learned their emotions were too much. Some become people pleasers because they learned love disappears when they disappoint others. Some become emotionally distant because trusting people once hurt them deeply. Others constantly try to appear strong because they are terrified of looking weak. And after years of surviving this way, the false self begins feeling normal. You become so used to performing for the world that you forget how to simply exist naturally. This is why many people feel emotionally exhausted all the time, because pretending is tiring. Pretending to be okay, pretending not to care, pretending to feel happy, pretending to feel strong when your soul quietly feels tired. Buddhism teaches that suffering grows when we become attached to illusions. And one of the biggest illusions humans carry is the false identity they created just to survive emotionally. The identity that says, be whatever people need you to be. Hide your pain. Do not upset anyone. Keep everyone happy. Do not let anyone see the real you. But the problem is this: the more you perform for acceptance, the more disconnected you become from your true self. And eventually, you begin feeling empty without understanding why. Because the soul becomes tired of living behind masks. This is where solitude becomes powerful. Not because solitude is always easy, but because solitude removes distractions. When you are alone long enough, there is nobody left to perform for, nobody left to impress, nobody left to emotionally manage, only you. And at first, this can feel deeply uncomfortable. Because silence exposes things distractions were hiding, you begin noticing how much of your personality was created from fear instead of peace. You realize how often you stayed quiet when your heart wanted to speak, how often you apologized for things that were not your fault, how often you abandoned your own needs just to keep people from leaving. You begin seeing how much energy was spent trying to become emotionally acceptable to everyone around you. And suddenly, you understand why your spirit felt so exhausted. Because deep inside, you were carrying the heavy burden of pretending. Many people do not even know who they are naturally anymore. They know who they are in relationships, who they are around friends, who they are around family. But when they are completely alone, they feel lost. Because the false identity needs external attention to survive. It needs validation, approval, reassurance. But solitude slowly begins destroying this false version of you, not violently, not all at once, but quietly, slowly, like fog disappearing when morning light arrives. At first, you may feel emotional discomfort. You may feel loneliness more strongly. You may feel old pain returning. You may feel sadness you ignored for years. But this does not mean you are breaking. It means the masks are falling away. And underneath those masks, your real self slowly begins breathing again. The self that does not need to perform for love. The self that does not constantly fear rejection. The self that is tired of betraying its own peace just to feel accepted. Buddhism teaches awareness, and awareness changes your entire life. Because once you begin seeing your false patterns clearly, you cannot unsee them. You notice how much of your behavior came from fear instead of truth. You notice how often you changed yourself just to avoid abandonment. You notice how many relationships only survived because you kept abandoning your own emotional needs. And this awareness feels painful at first, because you realize how long you ignored yourself. But slowly, something beautiful begins happening. You stop performing. You stop forcing yourself to fit inside spaces that suffocate your spirit. You stop begging people to understand you while hiding your real emotions. You stop shrinking yourself emotionally to make others comfortable. And for the first time in your life, you begin feeling honest, not perfect, not fearless, but honest. Your smile becomes real again. Your emotions become clearer. Your mind becomes quieter because the pressure to constantly pretend slowly disappears. This is why solitude can become sacred, because solitude introduces you to the person hiding beneath survival mode, the version of you that existed before constant emotional fear shaped your identity, the calm version, the soft version, the truthful version, the version of you that no longer wants to live through performance. And maybe this is why life sometimes removes certain people from your path, not to punish you, but to help you see who you became while trying to keep everyone, because some connections only survive when you betray yourself. And your soul eventually becomes too tired to continue living that way. The truth is, you were never meant to spend your whole life acting. You were never meant to constantly earn your right to exist. You were never meant to abandon your inner peace just to feel accepted. Real healing begins the moment you stop asking, "How can I make people love me?" and start asking, "Why did I stop loving myself enough to keep pretending?" That question changes everything, because the moment you stop performing, you finally begin returning to who you truly are. And maybe that is what solitude was trying to give you all along. Not isolation, not punishment, but freedom from the false self you built just to survive. Your heart called it love, but it was fear of being alone. One of the most painful truths many people discover too late is this: not every emotional attachment is love. Sometimes it is loneliness wearing the mask of love. Sometimes it is fear, fear of being abandoned, fear of emptiness, fear of starting over, fear of sitting alone with yourself. And because this fear feels so heavy, People begin holding on to relationships that quietly destroy their peace. They stay attached to people who confuse them, ignore them, emotionally drain them, make them question their worth. Not because their heart feels safe there, but because loneliness feels even more frightening. This is why many people continue chasing connections that hurt them. They keep hoping the person will suddenly change, suddenly care more, suddenly become emotionally available, suddenly love them correctly, and while waiting, they slowly lose themselves. Their emotional energy becomes consumed by overthinking. Why did they become distant? Why are they acting differently? Why do I feel unwanted? What did I do wrong? And slowly, their entire emotional world begins revolving around another person's behavior. This is not peace. This is emotional dependency. But because the attachment feels intense, many people mistake it for deep love. Buddhism teaches something very important. Attachment and love are not the same thing. Attachment says, I need you in order to feel okay. Love says, I care for you deeply without losing myself. Attachment creates fear. Fear of losing, fear of separation, fear of rejection. That is why emotionally attached people often suffer constantly inside relationships. Their happiness becomes unstable. One loving message makes them feel alive. One cold response makes them feel emotionally shattered. One moment of distance creates anxiety, because their inner peace is completely connected to someone else's attention. This creates emotional exhaustion. The mind never rests. The heart constantly waits. The soul slowly becomes tired. And the painful part is this: many people know they are suffering inside certain relationships, yet they still cannot let go. Because they are not only attached to the person, they are attached to the feeling of being needed, to the hope of finally being chosen, to the emotional comfort of not feeling alone. This is why some people continue accepting half love for years. Half effort, half attention, half presence. They continue giving everything to people who only give them emotional confusion, and deep inside, their spirit keeps shrinking. Buddhism teaches that suffering grows stronger the moment you abandon yourself to hold on to another person. And many people do exactly this. They ignore their intuition, ignore red flags, ignore emotional pain, just to avoid the emptiness of separation. But the truth is, staying where your soul feels unseen also creates loneliness. Sometimes the loneliest place in the world is inside a relationship where you no longer feel emotionally valued. Many people think being alone is suffering, but there is a deeper suffering, losing yourself while trying to keep someone else. This happens quietly. You stop expressing your real emotions because you fear pushing them away. You stop speaking honestly about your needs. You become emotionally smaller to make the relationship survive. You tolerate things that quietly break your spirit. And eventually, you become emotionally disconnected from yourself again. This is why Buddhist wisdom teaches awareness, because awareness helps you see the difference between love and emotional attachment. Real love does not constantly make you anxious. Real love does not force you to beg for basic care. Real love does not make you feel emotionally abandoned while physically present. Real love brings peace. Not perfect peace, but emotional safety, respect, honesty, gentleness. Most importantly, real love does not require you to betray yourself in order to keep it. The moment you reconnect deeply with yourself, your understanding of love changes completely. You stop chasing people who only want temporary access to your heart. You stop begging people to give you effort. You stop romanticizing emotional inconsistency, because self-connection creates clarity, and clarity changes what you tolerate. When you truly value your inner peace, you stop confusing emotional chaos with passion. You stop believing suffering is proof of love. You stop staying where your soul constantly feels heavy, and something powerful begins happening. You become less desperate for external reassurance, not because you stop caring about people, but because your emotional survival no longer depends entirely on them. This is freedom. The freedom to love without losing yourself. The freedom to walk away from connections that destroy your peace. The freedom to sit alone without feeling incomplete. At first this feels unfamiliar, because many people were taught that love means sacrifice. But Buddhism teaches balance, compassion without self-destruction, connection without attachment, love without abandoning awareness. And maybe this is the lesson your loneliness was trying to teach you all along. Maybe your heart was never starving only for another person. Maybe it was starving for inner peace, for self-respect, for emotional safety inside your own soul. Because the truth is, the moment you stop fearing loneliness, you stop accepting relationships that make you feel lonely too, and that changes your entire life. Your life changes when you stop abandoning your inner peace. There comes a moment in life where the soul becomes tired. Tired of chasing, tired of overthinking, tired of constantly trying to hold everything together emotionally. You become tired of explaining your worth to people who only see your value when you are useful to them. Tired of staying in places that quietly disturb your spirit. Tired of carrying emotional pain while pretending everything is fine. And slowly, something inside you begins changing. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly. Your heart begins craving peace more than attention. This is the beginning of awakening. Because most people spend years chasing things that destroy their inner calm. They chase approval, chase relationships, chase validation, chase emotional reassurance. And while chasing all these things, they slowly lose connection with themselves. Buddhism teaches that suffering often comes from attachment. Attachment to outcomes, attachment to people, attachment to the need for things to happen a certain way. The mind becomes restless, constantly worrying, constantly expecting, constantly fearing loss. And because of this, many people never truly rest emotionally, even during quiet moments. Their mind is still running, thinking about who stayed, who left, who changed, who no longer cares. This creates deep inner exhaustion. But eventually, life teaches you something powerful. You cannot heal while constantly betraying your own peace. You cannot feel emotionally safe while staying connected to things that repeatedly wound your spirit. At some point, you begin understanding that protecting your inner peace is not selfish. It is necessary. This changes the way you live completely. You stop forcing conversations that feel emotionally draining. You stop chasing people who only value you when it is convenient. You stop begging for understanding from people committed to misunderstanding you because your soul finally realizes something important. Not every connection deserves access to your energy. This awareness feels uncomfortable at first because many people were taught to sacrifice themselves for acceptance, to stay available no matter how exhausted they feel, to tolerate emotional disrespect in the name of love. But Buddhism teaches balance, compassion without self-destruction, kindness without self-abandonment, love without losing yourself completely. The moment you begin protecting your peace, your entire emotional world starts changing. You become calmer, not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you stop giving your energy to things that constantly disturb your spirit. You stop reacting to every emotional disappointment. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop feeling responsible for fixing everyone around you. And slowly, your mind becomes quieter. This is one of the most beautiful parts of healing. The chaos inside you slowly begins settling. The emotional storms become less powerful. The overthinking softens. Because peace finally becomes more important than emotional drama. Many people spend years believing intensity is love, but peace is love too. A peaceful mind, a peaceful heart, a peaceful connection. These things matter deeply. Buddhism teaches awareness of the present moment, because suffering often grows when the mind constantly lives in fear. Fear of future pain, fear of abandonment, fear of rejection. But awareness brings you back to the present. And in the present moment, you begin realizing how much unnecessary suffering your mind created, how much energy was wasted worrying about things outside your control. How many nights were spent overthinking people who were not thinking about you the same way? How many times you ignored your intuition just to keep temporary connections alive? And this awareness changes you. You begin choosing differently. You stop staying where your soul feels heavy. You stop forcing yourself to emotionally survive inside unhealthy environments. You stop shrinking your needs just to avoid losing people. Because deep inside, you finally understand this truth. Peace should never feel like something you must beg for. Real peace begins when you stop abandoning yourself. When you listen to your emotions honestly. When you respect your limits. When you allow yourself to rest emotionally. Many people are physically tired, but deeper than physical exhaustion, they are spiritually exhausted. Exhausted from carrying emotional weight that was never theirs to hold. Exhausted from constantly trying to earn love. Exhausted from pretending they are okay. This is why solitude can become healing. Because solitude gives your soul room to breathe again. No performance, no emotional pressure, no constant need to prove your worth. Just stillness, and inside that stillness, you slowly begin reconnecting with yourself again. You begin noticing simple things, the calmness of silence, the softness of your own breath, the peace of not constantly chasing, and for the first time in a long time, your nervous system begins relaxing. Your heart stops begging for survival. Your mind stops fighting for attention. You finally feel safe inside yourself. This is real healing. Not becoming emotionless, not avoiding people, but learning how to remain connected to yourself, no matter who enters or leaves your life, because people will always change. Some will stay, some will leave, some will misunderstand you, but your peace cannot continue depending on unstable things. At some point, you must become your own emotional home. A place where your soul feels safe, a place where your heart no longer feels abandoned. And maybe this is why your loneliness became so intense. Maybe life was trying to show you how disconnected you became from your own peace. Maybe all the emotional exhaustion was guiding you toward awakening, because sometimes the soul becomes tired of surviving in chaos. It begins craving something deeper, stillness, clarity, inner peace. And the beautiful thing is this: the moment you stop abandoning your peace for temporary people, your life slowly begins transforming. Not because the world changes immediately, but because you finally do. You are not being isolated, you are being returned to yourself. Sometimes life becomes strangely quiet. Certain people disappear. Conversations become shorter. The excitement you once chased no longer feels the same. And suddenly, you begin feeling alone in a way you cannot fully explain. Not physically alone, but emotionally distant from everything around you. You try distracting yourself. You try staying busy. You try returning to old habits that once made you feel alive. But something inside you has changed. The noise no longer satisfies your soul. And this confuses many people, because they think something is wrong with them. They think they are becoming cold, broken, emotionally disconnected. But Buddhism teaches something very different. Sometimes the soul becomes tired of shallow connection, tired of constant noise, tired of emotional performance, tired of living disconnected from inner truth. And when this happens, life often begins removing distractions, not to punish you, but to awaken you. This is why certain seasons of loneliness enter your life. Not every lonely season is meant to destroy you. Some lonely seasons are meant to return you to yourself, because many people spend years losing themselves inside relationships, inside expectations, inside emotional dependency. They become so focused on being needed by others that they stop listening to their own spirit completely. And eventually, the soul reaches a point where it cannot continue living that way. This is when awakening begins quietly. You start craving deeper peace. You lose interest in fake conversations. You become more protective of your energy. You stop forcing yourself to stay connected to people who leave your spirit feeling heavy. And slowly, you begin noticing something surprising. The loneliness that once felt painful starts feeling meaningful, because for the first time in your life, you are actually meeting yourself, not the version built from fear, not the version that constantly begged for acceptance, not the exhausted version trying to make everyone stay, but the real you beneath all the emotional noise, the calm you, the honest you, the peaceful you. At first, this process feels uncomfortable, because meeting yourself honestly can feel emotional. You begin seeing how long you ignored your own needs, how often you betrayed your peace to avoid rejection, How much energy was wasted chasing temporary attention, and there may even be sadness. Sadness for the version of yourself that spent years believing love had to be earned through suffering. Sadness for the moments you abandoned yourself just to keep people close. But this sadness is not weakness. It is awareness, and awareness is the beginning of transformation. Buddhism teaches that awakening happens the moment illusion begins falling apart. The illusion that external validation can complete you, the illusion that another person can permanently save you from loneliness, the illusion that your worth depends on who chooses you. These illusions slowly begin disappearing during solitude, and what remains is truth. The truth that peace was never outside you. The truth that your soul was never incomplete. The truth that you do not need to constantly chase connection to deserve love. This realization changes everything, because now you stop fearing silence. You stop panicking when life becomes quiet. You stop treating loneliness like proof that something is wrong with you. Instead, you begin seeing solitude differently, as sacred space, a space where healing happens quietly, a space where your nervous system finally rests, a space where your soul no longer has to perform. Many people never experience this kind of awakening because they spend their entire lives escaping themselves, always distracted, always emotionally dependent, always needing noise to avoid inner emptiness. But the moment you stop running from yourself, your entire inner world begins changing. You begin understanding your emotions more deeply. You become gentler with yourself. You stop needing everyone to understand you. You stop begging people to stay, because you finally realize something powerful. Your peace is more valuable than temporary attention. This does not mean you stop loving people. It means you stop losing yourself while loving them. There is a deep freedom in this. The freedom to sit alone without feeling abandoned. The freedom to enjoy your own company. The freedom to feel whole even during quiet seasons of life. And slowly, you begin creating a relationship with yourself that feels safe. A relationship not built on fear, not built on performance, but built on awareness, compassion, presence. This is why Buddhism values stillness so deeply, because stillness allows you to hear the parts of yourself that noise was drowning out. The world teaches people to constantly search outside themselves. More attention, more validation, more connection. But awakening teaches something different. Everything you were desperately searching for externally was quietly waiting inside you the whole time. Peace, love, wholeness, safety, not perfect happiness, but inner stability, the kind of peace that remains even when life changes. And maybe this is why life made you slow down. Maybe this loneliness is not a punishment. Maybe your soul simply became tired of disappearing inside everyone else. Maybe this quiet season was necessary. Necessary for healing, necessary for awakening, necessary for remembering who you were before fear convinced you that you were incomplete. Because the truth is, you are not being isolated by life. You are being guided back to yourself, back to your inner peace, back to the part of your soul that never needed the world's approval to be worthy. And one day, you will look back at this lonely season differently. You will realize it was not the season that destroyed you. It was the season that finally introduced you to yourself. One day, you will stop checking your phone hoping someone finally chooses you. You will stop shrinking yourself just to keep people from leaving. You will stop begging silently for love, attention, and emotional reassurance. And something inside you will become very quiet, not empty, peaceful. Because for the first time in your life, your heart will no longer depend on other people to feel whole. You will sit alone in a quiet room, and instead of feeling abandoned, you will feel connected to yourself. That moment changes everything, because the deepest healing begins when solitude stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like home. You will begin understanding that not everyone who left was meant to stay. Not every rejection was a loss. Not every lonely season was meant to break you. Some seasons were meant to wake you up, to show you how much of yourself you sacrificed while trying to be loved, to show you how often you abandon your peace just to avoid being alone, And slowly, you will stop chasing people who cannot see your value. You will stop forcing connections that drain your spirit. You will stop searching for your worth inside distracted hearts, because your soul will finally understand something beautiful. The person you needed most was never someone outside you. It was always you, the version of you that deserved kindness, the version of you that deserved rest, the version of you that deserved love without having to suffer for it. And maybe this whole journey was never about becoming someone new. Maybe it was about returning to the self you abandoned long ago. The calm self, the honest self, the peaceful self hidden beneath years of fear, attachment, and emotional exhaustion. Buddhism teaches that peace begins the moment you stop running from yourself. And maybe that is why life became quiet. Maybe the noise had to disappear so you could finally hear your own soul again. So if you are in a lonely season right now, do not hate yourself for it. Do not believe your life is empty. Do not believe you are forgotten. Sometimes loneliness is not life taking love away from you. Sometimes it is life guiding you back to the love you were always supposed to build within yourself. And one day, you will thank this quiet season because it did not destroy you. It introduced you to the person you were always searching for. If this video spoke to a part of your heart that has been feeling lonely, tired, or emotionally lost, take a quiet moment for yourself today. Breathe deeply, slow down, and remember, you do not need to become someone else to deserve peace. And if you are on this journey of healing, self-awareness, and inner peace, subscribe to Golden Lotus Wisdom and walk this path with us. You are not alone in what you are feeling. Sometimes the most important relationship you will ever build is the one with yourself.